Welcome to Backcountry PPG's Beginner Paramotor Training. Day number 1 starts with a lot of first. This is for most people going to be the first time they've ever seen a paraglider, touched a paraglider, inflated, and so on. So we start the morning off early with a lot of introductions. We want to show you the harness, show you the wing, show you the risers, show you the brakes, show you all of those pieces so you know what you're working with. After we've introduced those pieces to you, we'll walk you through and demonstrate what we're going to start with, which for most mornings is going to be forward inflations. This is going to be how you hook in, how you grab your controls, and how you actually inflate the glider. One of the things that we do on the first morning and try very hard to do throughout the entire class is only introduce one piece at a time. We don't necessarily want to overwhelm you and flood you with information that you're not going to remember. We've learned through our decade of experience that it's better to just slowly add things versus trying to add everything at once. So after we've gone through these introductions, we've shown you a demonstration. We start with forward inflations. Students will start running with those gliders and learning what it's like the very first time hooking into the wing. This is a bit of an intimidating moment, but we have an instructor standing by each student for every inflation. And like I mentioned, we're only adding one piece per inflation. As the morning rolls on, students are going to start to get it, start to feel it, start to kind of understand what we're working with. We're also filming your launches and showing you as we go so you can see what you look like and what it should look like. This is, like I mentioned, a lot of firsts. It's going to be an intimidating moment, but it's going to be that first moment where you start to click all the pieces together. As the morning rolls on, we then transition over into what we call the classroom for some ground school. Included in the training class, we provide you with a 65-page ground school book. This is going to go through everything from terminologies, apps, weather, rules, regulations, airspace, and so on. We start by going through this book, answering questions that students start to build as the morning goes on, and then we roll into our weather class. We like to introduce right away how you understand weather, read weather, what to look for. That way you can start to see patterns and start to read weather as we go through the class. After that morning session is over and we've done the classroom work, we then take a break until the evening. Normally in the evening times, we have a nice breeze here in our training field, so we start with some reverse kiting. The students come out and we start to, like we did in the morning, add one piece at a time. Right at the start, we're typically doing a lot more for the students, and as the evening rolls on, we start stepping back more and more. There's a bunch of pieces. We'll give you just one at a time while we do for you the other ones. Then we kind of back off and only do one, then we kind of back off and only do half of one, and we just slowly add those pieces. Our whole goal is not to overwhelm you and instead to encourage you to get these pieces and teach you every single piece one at a time. This is going to be a lot of letting you do it, critiquing as we go. You start to make these mistakes, we start to tweak those mistakes. One of the biggest things that we do here is we immediately remove bad habits. We are a big advocate of not just practice, but perfect practice. We don't want you to be practicing something wrong even 3 times because you start to build that muscle memory. You know, in this practice of forward inflations, reverse kiting, kiting in general, you're building muscle memories. And at the very start of building this muscle memory, building this reflex, it's very important that we only allow the good muscle memory and the good reflexes to be built. So we make those small critiques and we take this very calm, gentle approach to tweaking those problems and slowly adding more and more of those pieces. One of the other things we immediately start doing on day number 1 is getting the students used to the motor, the throttle, and the kill switch. You'll see we actually put them in the paramotor and just have them walk around. The reason for this is every time you have that paramotor on your back, you get a little bit more used to it and it gets a little bit more comfortable. What we want to do and what we shoot for is that by the time you're flying, that paramotor is extremely comfortable and normal to you. We don't want that to feel new. We don't want the throttle to feel new. We don't want the kill switch to feel new. So starting on day number 1, we immediately start having you just take laps around the field, get in the paramotor, get out of the paramotor, play with that throttle, play with that kill switch, and just get comfortable with it. We like to take a building block approach to paramotoring and try and introduce one piece at a time throughout the entire class. That way, by the time you're flying, the only new piece is the fact that your feet are leaving the ground. This approach allows us to better focus on one thing at a time and make sure we really dial in each piece before moving to the next. Once we've done all of that, we will do a quick debrief, and that will move us into day number 2. Day number 2 is very similar to day number 1. One of the things that you're going to notice with paramotor training in general, as well as our paramotor training, is it's a lot of repetition. In order to build a skill set that leans heavily on muscle memory and reflexes, you have to do a lot of reps. You have to do the same thing over and over and over again to build that comfort, to build that muscle memory, that reflex, that ability to respond to things correctly just off reflex. So that's what we do a lot of. We'll do a lot more inflations, just more and more and more and more inflations until you are just so sick and tired of inflations that you want to stop. Then we'll do some more. The reason being is because the only way to get really good at inflations, the only way to get really good at this is to just do it over and over again. After we've done some inflations in the morning, we typically have a little bit of an instructor example where they'll kind of show us what looks correct. We'll kind of walk through some video. We'll do a little bit of that video debrief review, as well as we'll get those motors back on your back. The next thing that we'll do is not just having the motor on your back, not just, walking around with it, but we're also going to start it. We're going to learn how to pre-flight it. We're going to learn how to prime it. We're going to learn how to run it up. We're going to learn to trust that thrust. We're going to play with that throttle. We're going to play with that kill switch. We're going to do all of the things, right? It's a building block paramotor training. Day number 2 means we add more blocks than we had on day number 1. So those inflations, like I mentioned, are going to be a little bit more solo. You're going to be doing those with a little less help from us. You're going to be laying the wing out. You're going to be hooking in. You're going to be clipping in. You're going to be doing the motion over and over again. We're going to get those motors on your back. You're going to learn how to start them. You're going to run them up. You're going to feel that thrust. You're going to learn to trust that thrust. We'll work into leaning back into them. We'll do all of those things. As soon as that morning session wraps up, we step into the classroom for some more ground school. We typically fill every morning with about a half hour to hour of ground school from day 1 to day 10. So we like to talk about ground school and go through stuff every single day. After that, we'll end up back at the training field in the evening for more kiting. We typically have really good wind here in Utah in the evenings, so we fill those evenings with as much kiting as possible. Just like day number 1, it's more of the same. Practice, practice, practice. Practice makes perfect. One of the things that we've really learned over the last decade of teaching people how to fly is that the better you are at glider control, which is the art of keeping control of the wing on the ground, the better you are as a pilot. The better your launches are, the better your landings are, the smoother you will be, the more in control you will be, and the safer you will be. So we build that skill. We build that skill. We build that skill. We build that skill. And we do it over and over and over again. Our instructors are standing right there helping you. And like I mentioned in day number 1, we're very big advocates of not letting bad habits get built. If we see you doing something wrong, we're there to kind of critique it. We want to build good muscle memory. After that, we'll do a bit of a debrief, and that will move us into day number 3. Day number 3 is when people start to make a lot of progress. By this point, people have spent many, many hours with the wing actually practicing controlling it, hooking in, and doing all of the motions. They typically are pretty good at being an independent paramotor pilot and are starting to get closer and closer to being ready to fly. At this point, what we start to add is more motor-related things. We like to teach them how to prime the motor. We like to teach them how to pre-flight. We like to teach them how to start it. In addition to those silly little things that do really make a big difference, we also want students to start running up the motors. We want them to start getting comfortable with that throttle. We want them to start getting comfortable with the power. We want the vibration, the noise, the feeling, the excitement, that gut feeling when you actually start up the engine to be comfortable. The one thing that we really push for in our training here at Backcountry PPG is that by the time you go flying, the only new piece is that your feet actually leave the ground. We want that motor to feel like home. We want it to be comfortable, and we want you to be used to it. We want that throttle to feel like home. We want it to just blend into your hand as if it never exists. We want every piece to just feel normal. If we do that, if we have you run around with this motor, and although it's kind of silly, it makes a big difference, and we have you play with that throttle, we have you start the motor a dozen times, and we have you run it up as many times as you can stand, by the time you hook it in to go flying, it's normal. It's a big difference when that motor feels normal to you and when that motor feels new to you. We really, really, really push to get that new feeling out of the students and get that comfortable feeling into them by the time they go flying. And you can really tell when somebody's used to a paramotor, when somebody's put it on a bunch of times, walked around a bunch of times, and done all of those things versus not. So that's the one thing that we really push for and start to do more of. We do that pre-flight, we do that prime, we do all of those things. In addition, in the morning, we'll spend time just doing a bunch of inflations. It's a lot of repetition, like I mentioned. The more and more times that you do it, the better and better you're going to get. The thing that we look for is consistency. At this point, students are probably 50-50 in terms of success and failure. And what we're really pushing for is 90-10, 90% success, 10% failure, and even less, like 95, 98, 99, even 100% success, 0% failure, which although is unattainable, it is what we shoot for. After the morning session, it rolls us into the evening, which typically consists of more kiting. We'll do a ground school in between the two morning and evening sessions. We'll typically talk about a lot of things, including airspace, rules, regulations, FAR 103, all of that stuff, and we'll roll into more kiting in the evening. The more time you spend with this wing, the better you are going to be at controlling it, the more comfortable you're going to be at controlling it, the better your launches are going to be, the better your landings are going to be. After we do all of that, we'll do a quick debrief like we have done the previous days, and that will roll us into day number 4. Day number 4 is when we start to add the final few pieces before it's flying time. One of the things that we like to have every student do quite a bit of before they fly is kite with the motor on. We want them to be used to what it feels like inflating that wing with a cage, used to what it feels like grabbing the controls with the throttle, used to all the silly little things that change when you add that one new piece. Now, the one thing we don't do is we don't start the motor. So there's no power, there's no thrust, there's no spinning prop, there's no quote-unquote risk of getting a line in the prop, getting a wing on a hot exhaust, or any of those things. It is just the motor on your back. That way we don't have to worry about the stress, hassle, and mind games that get played when we turn a motor on. In addition to that stuff, we do a bunch more inflations and some kiting in the evening before we roll into day number 5. Day number 5 is when things start to get exciting. On day number 5, we add what's called power taxis. Power taxis is essentially where you inflate that wing and add just a little bit of power until it starts to push you, hold that for about, say, 30 feet, then slowly ease off and bring the wing down. This gets you used to what it's like to add power when the wing is up. This gets you used to what it's like when that motor starts to push you, that cage starts to push you with a wing attached. We do a handful of power taxis, and sometimes we'll do as many as 10, 20, 30, even if you need to, until you feel absolutely rock solid. There's two things that have to happen in this process before we say it's go time and get you flying. Number one, we want the instructors, aka myself and the other instructors there, to feel confident in you, and number two, we want you to feel confident in you. By doing this, we make sure that we are not trying to fly a student who mentally is not prepared to be flying, because it's not just a physical thing. You can be physically ready, but if you're mentally not there, if you're mentally frustrated, angry, or so on and so forth, we don't want you in the air. Us instructors also want to learn in this process how well you respond to us, how well we've built this relationship. One of the things that happens through the first 5, 6, 7 days and throughout the entire class is that we as instructors build a relationship with you as students. So we learn how you respond to us. We learn how we need to approach you. We learn how we need to give you information. Maybe you like aggressive and loud in your ear, or maybe you like really soft and delicate in your ear. We're going to slowly learn how to communicate with you, and it starts to come out in these power taxis. What we find is we want these power taxis to work out all of those nerves. You can tell when somebody's not done a power taxi and when somebody's done 10 or even 15, because you see the level of comfort that they have. You see the comfort build. You see the, yeah, I know what I'm doing. This isn't new, right? That's the thing that we're really working out with all of these pieces, is let's get that new factor out of the way. Let's get used to everything. Let's get comfortable to everything. Now the final piece, which you'll see we actually take first flights on this day, if the power taxis look great, if the skills are there, right? They have the glider control skills we require. If the student-instructor relationship is solid enough, the student feels good and the instructor feels good, then we'll fly. A power taxi quickly becomes a launch because you just apply more and more and more throttle until you get off the ground, and that will roll us into day number 6. Now, one of the things that we also focus heavily on at our training that you may not see elsewhere is that we're really big advocates of long launches when you're new. The reason being is simple. A launch is not a lot of running. You may look like you're moving your feet, but as soon as you start to get into that power, the motor is really pushing you, the wing is really lifting you, and you're just kind of skipping those feet across the ground. If you can do that for a while, keep that wing under control, and slowly build that power up in intensity all the way to full throttle, and just keep put your landing gear down, that's the one thing we say, you will float away from the ground effortlessly without risk of sitting down in your seat too soon, without risk of breaking a prop. So we love to have long launches at start and slowly work those launches down, make them faster, help the student get into the throttle sooner, help the student get off the ground sooner. But at the start, we want long launches. Long launches are safe launches, long launches are successful launches, and they look good compared to a forced, slow, fast launch. That rolls us into day number 6. Day number 6 is a lot of what day number 5 was. This is going to be a continued power taxi with the students. This is going to be more repetition of flights for students that are ready. This is going to be more of what we were working on the day before. Like we mentioned, for those students that are already flying, we're going to shorten those launches by slowly getting them into that power sooner. We don't want to push the student too far, too fast. We want them to kind of go at a pace which is comfortable for them. Sometimes that's really quick, sometimes it's really slow, but the key is that everything looks smooth, calm, and in control. As long as the pilot is smooth, calm, and in control, we can continue to progress, we can continue to get better, and we can work on more and more things. That rolls us into day number 7. Day number 7 consists of a lot of first flights. Some students will be ready for first flights on day number 5, maybe day number 6, but day number 7 is usually when most first flights take place. One thing that we do at Backcountry PPG is we have a bit of a slower pace. We do not want to push our students so hard that they are physically exhausted, and we do not, absolutely 120% do not put our students in the air before they are ready. If you are not ready to fly by day 7, you won't fly on day 7. If you're not ready to fly by day 10, you won't fly on day 10. We are going to put safety over everything else. Now, as soon as those first flights happen and the student is actually in the air, we have a bit of a process as to what we do on the first handful of flights to build confidence with the throttle, confidence with turning, and confidence in the pilot themselves. We have a handful of what I call drills. This will be things like full throttle turns to the left, full throttle turns to the right, full throttle straight climbs, ease off, come down straight, ease off, come down in a 360, and so on. The whole goal of this is for those students to learn what is okay, for the students to learn that it's okay to get into full throttle and make a big 360 left turn. It's okay to get into throttle and make a big 360 right turn. It's okay to climb full throttle. A lot of the time, students are scared of that power. They're very slow getting into it. They're very hesitant to actually hit it. They're nervous to make turns, all of those things. So by going through those drills on radio with the instructor, myself, and just walking the students through a bunch of those drills, we build that confidence. Once we've built that confidence and I can consistently rely that the student is going to apply throttle when the throttle needs to be applied, we can do what I call practice approaches. This is all happening again on the student's first or maybe second flight. Practice approaches is where the student is going to do a simulated landing with a go around. So they're going to set themselves up on a nice approach. They're going to keep that oscillation under control. They're going to learn what the glide slope is the wings so they can land where they would like to land. They're going to learn what it's like when they get out of the seat, because things do slightly change, and how to get out of that seat smoothly without disrupting the wing. And they're going to go around to do it again. What we've seen in the last decade of teaching paramotors is that a good approach, a good landing approach, leads to a good landing. A forced landing approach where oscillation is present, or you're not controlling the direction in the exact way you would like to, or something is not quite right, it is often not a great landing. Most of the time when students have a bad landing, it's because they forced the landing, not because they came in on a beautiful approach with a great glide slope right where they wanted to, off throttle, motors killed, out of the seat, and they don't have a good landing. That's usually not the case. So by doing these practice approaches, they build that confidence in being able to bring it down and set it down exactly where they'd like to, in control, in a very smooth manner. Now, after we've done that, which is a lot of talking, we'll do more and more first flights. Now, after we do that, that rolls us into day number 8. Day number 8 is a very exciting day because it consists of a lot of flying. Now, sometimes day number 8 happens on day number 7, sometimes on day number 9, sometimes on day number 10. There's no guaranteed that this is what we're going to be working on each day. This is just the rough outline, and it does change depending on how the students are progressing. One of the things that we do here at Backcountry PPG is we move each student as they need to be moved, meaning if a guy is ready to fly on day 5 and the other guys aren't ready to fly till day 10, we will not hold back the guy that's ready to fly on day 5, and we will not force those that are not ready to fly till day 10. We move you at the pace that you are ready. Now, that being said, what we do a lot of on day number 8 is we get you into more independent flights. We want you to be flying with less and less of our help. So this is the day where I basically hop on radio and say, hey, I'm not going to say anything unless I absolutely have to. Let's do this. And I'll sit there with the button pressed, mouth on the radio, ready to say something, but the whole goal is not to say something unless I absolutely have to. This builds a lot of confidence in the students. This builds a lot of confidence in the students. By flight number 2, flight number 3, I can be saying almost nothing to these students because they absolutely have the skills. By going through that building block process of learning one piece at a time and building one piece, building that confidence in themselves, we see that students are extremely successful with their flights right away. Now, landings can be a little bit tricky, and we have a lot of things to work on those landings. Most of the time, students are just scared to land on their feet and are not committed to landing on their feet, and that's just a mental thing that you work out within the first 10, 15 flights. We call it the 15 flight rule. By about 15 flights on, you've kind of got it figured out. You've worked out those nerves, and things can go smoothly. Things can flow quickly. So sometimes students will get 5 flights on day number 8, sometimes 10, sometimes more. That rolls us into day number 9. Just like day number 8, day number 9 is a lot of independence. This is where I want students to build that confidence in themselves to be an independent and successful paramotor pilot. I want them to be able to go out, lay their wing out, get their motor on, pre-flight, prime, check airspace, all the stuff they have to do by themselves without our help. This point, instructors are doing as little, if anything, and most of us just kind of stand around and watch, which is by design. We don't want to be out there doing everything for the students. We want you as the student to be doing everything at this point. You should know how to pre-flight the motor. You should know how to lay the wing out. You should know how to hook in. You should know how to launch. So just like on day number 8, the instructor, myself, or one of the other instructors is going to be there on radio ready to say something if we have to, but the whole goal is not to. We want to say as little as possible on both the launch and the landing. Obviously, we are sitting watching the entire time, helping monitor you, the student, and letting you know if you're doing something wrong or need to change something or tweak something and so on. But the whole goal is that we build you as an independent paramotor pilot. You can't do that if we're telling you what to do the entire time. We'll add one little piece. Maybe you're struggling a little bit with oscillation, so we'll work on that with you just a little bit. Maybe you're struggling with that approach, so we'll work on that. The whole goal is, again, that we build you into an independent paramotor pilot. Now, that rolls us into day number 10. Like day number 9, day number 10 is a lot more repetition with independence. At this point, most every student, if not every student, is flying, and the whole goal of day number 10 is to get them as many flights as humanly possible. Now, the one thing that we as instructors do that students may not realize, or you may not realize, is we work very hard to manage these students' energy level. One thing that we've learned over the last decade of teaching people to fly is that if you push people as hard as physically possible, they will actually have less success. The reason being is as soon as they get exhausted, they start making mistakes they otherwise would not. Now you have students that are trying to launch that trip and fall down or face plant or break a prop, and you kind of taint that experience. So the one thing that we do is we manage that energy level. If we notice that the student is stumbling more than normal or making mistakes that are not normal, we'll call it for them for a little while. We'll really work hard to manage that, because what we want and what you should do when you're new is try and minimize as many negative experiences as possible. If the winds are not quite right, don't do it. If your landing approach isn't quite right, go around. Work hard to have really good experiences when it's a very fresh thing. Here at the training class, we work hard to do that. Our goal is that you don't break any equipment. Our goal is that you don't break any props. Our goal is that you don't have any bad launches or bad landings. Not because the equipment can't handle it or that you'll get hurt. Chances are neither one will happen, but because we don't want to taint your experience. We don't want to crush your confidence. We want you to be confident but cautious. We want you to know that energy management is a thing. We want you to know that sometimes you just have to say no, and that not flying and wishing you flew is better than flying and wishing you didn't fly. So that's kind of what we do on day number 10. Most of the time, students get anywhere from 10 to 15 flights. Sometimes they don't get nearly as many because they're tired. Sometimes they get more. The whole goal is as many as humanly possible. At this point, students kind of go up, do a big circle, come down and land, and rinse, repeat. We want the whole process. We want everything. We want the launch, we want the landing, we want the layout, we want every piece and part. That's typically the hard part. Flying is kind of easy. The launch and landing is the hard stuff, and that's what we're here to help you with. Once we do that, we kind of wrap it up and have a small ceremony for the class, pass out some certificates, shake hands, and send you guys on your merry way. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you are interested in attending the Backcountry PPG Beginner Training Program here in Salt Lake City, Utah, visit our website, backcountryppg.com, or contact us at 801-599-1684. If you have questions, please reach out to me, Trevor, anywhere on any social media platform, or via text or call at 801-599-1684. If you have questions, concerns, thoughts, or any of those things, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching again. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video.